Okay,
Hey, there we
Uncertain
go.
Dots, episode 24. That's a lot.
Two
That's like,
dozen.
yeah, we've been doing this for a while, actually. We skipped a
Yeah.
week here, skipped a week there, but overall, I think the only thing I get afraid of every time is that, we'll get into a discussion about how we hate computers or whatever, and it's like, didn't we talk about this before? And I'm afraid that we're going to keep saying the same thing over and over again, but
Yeah, I think we probably do a little of that, but yeah, I don't know. That's that's what happened. So I
can't
just had
stop us.
the classic absent-minded professor experience of having to read my own book to remember how I explained something. So I'm doing
That,
momentum and energy in my gen ed relativity class, and I'm like, Jesus, how am I going to talk about this? Like, wait, I wrote a book about this. How did I explain this when I wrote the book? And I'm like, yeah, I no longer remembered how the energy chapter worked. So I
well,
had to
that's
go.
like Henry Jones and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I wrote it down so I wouldn't have to remember.
You have to remember it. Yes, exactly.
And that's why you wrote a book, right?
That's why I wrote the book. So
But
yeah,
actually,
and I also
I've essentially finished my book. I mean, it needs to be edited and stuff like that. But I was thinking about going through and writing notes about, because the thing that comes up after you write it and you publish it, it's like someone wants to interview about it. You kind of know, some of the punchlines. You got to know all the punchlines so that
right.
you can bring those up. But or you forget.
Yeah, yeah. It's a little tricky. I end up I have sort of I find myself slipping into kind of a canned spiel about certain aspects of the book. So people ask me about what the forthcoming book is about, and you know
I
I
don't
find
I don't know.
myself
What is it about? Let
falling
me check the cover.
into a pattern. And Kate points out you can tell when I start going through stuff that I've rehearsed before because the pitch of my voice goes up a little bit, and I speak with a different cadence when I'm using well rehearsed text than if I'm just ad libbing stuff. And I notice myself doing this in class too. Like I have a lecture, and the lecture is I talk a little bit higher. I mean, not like falsetto high, but my voice goes up a little bit, and I talk in a slightly different manner. And then whenever I ad lib an aside about something, then I drop out of that mode and um, and fall into a different mode of speaking, um, which is I'm very definitely aware when I do that, and I think it's noticeable to other people too. So,
Well, I just try to avoid that by never rehearsing. Um, you know, I don't like to the problem is if I give a talk and I rehearse it, then when I get to the talk, I realize that I've said it that way before, and then I'm like, well, I need to say it a little bit different because I just said that, even though I said it to a different group of people. So I end up
right.
saying it in a bad way afterwards. So, and the same thing happens if I have like two sections of the same class. It doesn't work very well. So.
Absolutely, I've done that. I was teaching two sections of the same class. I've said in the second one, like as I said earlier, to an entirely different bunch of students. So yes, that 10 minutes into this lecture, you don't remember the thing that I said 40 minutes into the previous lecture. Right? Gotta
That's right. Because they weren't there.
gotta work on that. So. Um, Yeah, my dad taught sixth grade for 30 some years, and the first time I was doing two sections of the same class back to back, I complained about it, and he just laughed at me. He said, I taught the same thing 4 times a day. So for like 10 years, it was like every day I had the same class 4 times.
Wow.
It's,
I don't. I did teach one high school class once for I think it's just a half of a year, and that's way too much work. That's for sure. Just the fact that you meet every day, you know,
yeah.
makes it a lot harder.
Yeah, he said that his experience was the third one was the best. He said that the first time, it was a little rocky. There are a few things that you gotta get the bugs out. The second time was a little better, but there was still a few things that weren't quite perfect. And he said the third time he absolutely nailed it. And he said the fourth time through he was so sick of it that we're done.
Yeah.
I definitely I do that on a longer time scale too. If I teach, if I teach a class more than like 3 times in a row, then I blow up I just throw out the PowerPoints.
I mean, in terms of a semester, 3 semesters in a row.
Yeah, if I teach the same class 3 iterations of the same class in a row, then around that time I have to just throw away the notes that I'm going off and do it over, because I start to get it's so predictable that I start to get bored with it myself, and then that carries over to the class, and I can sort of see that if I'm not doing something dramatically different from one term to the next, I start to lose interest. The student engagement goes down, the student evaluations go down, and then I gotta blow it up and start over. So.
I do that with kind of with labs. The labs. I always make up my own labs, and the ones I teach the most often, I mean, they're never the same from semester to semester. Just because it's not that I get bored with them as much as I find something that may work a little bit different or a little bit better, or I broke the equipment for that lab, so we're going to do it different this time. But that's what's nice about, and I think
somebody else has all the stopwatches.
We always lose stopwatches. We have like 1 billion meter sticks, but the stopwatches, at least the students have phones now.
The 1-foot plastic rulers are another one those just evaporate.
Yeah, we have a giant box of those. But the compasses seem to evaporate, which is no, not compass, but protractors.
Oh yeah.
And but it's so funny that there's a lot of students that are like, I don't. How do you use this thing?
Yeah,
but
yeah, and yet they walk off.
That's right. No, it's the faculty that take them, because we only have like one set, and they'll take them for another class. It's the faculty's fault. It's my fault. It's my fault. But I think everyone in our department essentially uses online labs anyway, where they write. They don't have a lab manual. No one has a lab manual. I'm not even sure if people publish lab manuals. I guess they do, but what do you guys?
Yeah, what I've started doing in an effort to save paper a little bit is I have lab handouts that I use, but I put them up on the course website.
Yeah.
And they go on Moodle and download it. And,
did you write it yourself?
A surprising fraction of the students want to print it in class. Can we print this out? Like, why? Just read it off the screen.
But is it your material, or did you get it from somewhere else?
It tends to be, so some of them are things that other people in the department wrote, and depending on what format it's in, either I modify it or I just use it as is and then tell students to skip steps. Because one guy in the department has all his lab handouts written in tech, and
you don't want to change it.
Yeah, and it's just a hassle because there's like graphics that are in there that are just like if you want to change the figure, you got to redo it. So every now and then, if I get deeply dissatisfied with one of his labs, I'll just rewrite it from scratch in Word. I can do tech on my laptop, but not on the desktop. So, all right, I could waste an afternoon getting tech to work on the desktop, but I just haven't wanted to do that. So.
But it seems like most people, most faculty start with someone else's labs and then slowly modify them, make them their own over time. But after you make your own for a while and you feel comfortable with what you want them to do and how to explain it and so forth, it's kind of tough when you then go back to use someone else's labs. I used some labs from the Matter and Interactions textbook that go with the second semester, and they'll do things like calculate the electric field due to a rod, and it's totally not the way I would do it. So you either have to go with their sheets and make sure you understand what they're doing, or just say scrap it and just make up your own way. So
yeah, there are people, like one of my colleagues thinks a lot about this stuff, and has these lab handouts that are like very thorough, very well written, and frequently have steps in them that I look at initially and go, why in hell would you do that? Like, and it actually, if you talk to them about it, and it addresses a particular misconception, and there's a good reason for everything that's in his handouts. But of course, frequently I don't talk to him before I'm in the lab, and then students come up to me and go, well, why does it say to do this? Like,
I don't know.
Why would you do that? Don't do that. Go away. Then hastily tell everybody, no, skip step 4.
Although the best lab that I have for my non-physics majors is it came out of student problems, and it's I told them a particular way to measure the launch velocity for those projectile launchers, and they all mess it up. So I just said the whole lab, the next semester, the whole lab is just measure the launch velocity, do it however you want, and then we'll talk about it. And that one's for the most part, a better lab, because they don't get so caught up in what do we do with step 2. They make up the steps. And but then as a disadvantage, you get some students that are just like, oh, we just shot the ball at 45 degrees and measured the mass of the Earth and calculated the velocity that way. I'm like, what?
Yeah, so like, how did that work?
What? But they do some weird things. But
yeah.
But that's good, because then they don't. I don't like when students get so caught up in following the procedures of the lab that they abandon all reason and they just become robots. I don't want that. I want them to think about the physics. I want them to think about what they're doing and why, not just because I said so.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to. I frequently have. Like a number of our simpler labs, I don't have a handout. I'm like, like some of the basic circuit labs that we do. I'm like, look, make a circuit that looks like this. Measure some currents. Tell me what you find. And some students hate that. They're used to, if they had labs in high school, they were, do this, do that, do every action.
Fill in the data in this box and then multiply it by 2 and put it in this box, and
and so some of our students are really uncomfortable with the no handout lab. It's like, no, think about what you have to do to measure that. And they really don't like that, and so I get some pushback occasionally. And it's one of those things that it's a useful thing to do. So I'm generally willing to, like the first lab of the term is going to be really painful because there isn't a handout and you're going to hate this. And I said, but there is a reason why I'm doing it this way, and I try to be upfront and explain what the reason is. And I say, this is how it's going to be, and then by the third or fourth, then people start to get the hang of it, and it works a little better. But yeah, I don't do as much of that as I would like. I would like to do. I have at times done way more open-ended stuff, and I've stepped back from that. I have some handout that says, okay, here's the outline of what you need to do. And you have to invent steps 3 through 16, but I'm going to get you started and give you a framework for it, and that works a little better.
Yeah, I think you can't just, if you just do open-ended labs, they can't get to the more complicated stuff because they don't understand it. And if, especially if you're using some new piece of equipment or something, it's really difficult. Even in circuits, when they first start using power supplies and multimeters and stuff like that, I mean, you can't do open-ended there, or you're going to have a whole bunch of blown fuses. So, right?
we do that. I had
What's
colleague
that smell?
who
Something smells. It's yeah,
was doing
it's melting rubber.
my colleague who's doing lab practicum in a E&M course. He said that 3 of the first 4 students to do the the little circuits practicum test blew a fuse during their practicum.
And then the later students may not even know that the fuse is blown, and they're like, I'm doing this wrong. And so it's really hard. That's the thing I get scared of when I give a practicum test, is if the first student messes it up, then later students, they don't think that the fuse is broken. They think they're just doing it wrong. And that's not good.
Yeah, that's needlessly stressful.
But the other good lab that I do, it's for collisions. Collisions, if you tell them what to do, they just do it, and they say, oh, yay, whatever. I just get them those carts with the magnetic bumpers and other types of bumpers on them, and I say, just play with them. Just play with them for a while. And they love that. And they really start thinking about things that they can do. And then I tell them, okay, measure some collisions and see if momentum is conserved. And I let them do it their own way. Some of them use the motion detectors, some use the photo gates. But if they do it the way they feel comfortable with, then that's better.
Yeah, photo gates, that's old school.
Yeah, but it works. The old school stuff's great if it works. Because they understand it a lot better. Sometimes those motion detectors, they don't have a good connection of what's going on. If you have a flag passing through a photo gate and it gives you the time, I mean, that's pretty easy. So.
Yeah, there's the magic switch on those motion detectors. I don't know if you have the Pasco stuff, but the Pasco motion detectors, there's this switch on there.
The basketball to the cart.
That has like a wide set of waves and a narrow set of waves, and there's a whole set of problems that the solution to it is just toggle that to whichever one it's not on. Like you just change that to the other position, then suddenly it works better. And it doesn't. I've never been convinced that it's one particular position that they need to be in. It's just sometimes it's wrong. And you need to flip it.
Just do the other thing.
Yeah, there are a few labs that I've done so many times that students come. Like we do the E over M lab. The electron beam in a glass ball, and they measure the radius of the circle that it makes for magnetic field. And there are problems with that where people come to me and say, okay, what number did you get? And they say this, like, no, you used the wrong radius. Go, like, no, you used the diameter instead of the radius. No, you use the inner radius of the coil instead of the outer. Like I've done it so many times that from the amount that their answer is off, I can tell immediately what it is that they did wrong without even looking at their apparatus.
I can usually do that with when they're trying to write a numerical calculation and they get an error. I usually say, oh, I know exactly where it is. Right here. You said F is mg, but you wrote g as a scalar, and then you multiply it. You try to add it to another vector, and it's the same problems that come up all the time. So,
yeah.
Which is good because I don't want them to try to figure those things out and get frustrated. I don't mind, pointing out those kind of errors so that they can focus on the physics.
Yeah, VPython is not consistently helpful, and it doesn't help that there's like 3 different versions of it installed in different places around here. But there's one version that when it throws an error, it highlights the line where the error occurred, and so then that's actually helpful. But there's another version that just gives you cryptic error text in the shell window, and then you have to try and figure out what was wrong.
Well, the first kind, when it highlights, that's a kind of like a compiling error. Another one's a run error. If it has a compile error, then it puts it in it shows you where. Like if you
Yeah,
left
but
out a parenthesis.
one of the versions we have doesn't even for
Okay.
the compile errors doesn't go to the right line. So you have to, and then the other thing, even the one that does, I mean, there's some valuable lessons that they get from the failure modes of that. 'Cause, like the one that does go to the line where it stopped compiling, um, it takes a little while sometimes for them to learn that you have to start there and work backwards.
That's right.
Right,
It might not be that line.
It might not actually be that line. It might be that you forgot a parenthesis on the previous line. And so it's interpreting your print statement as an extra clause in the definition of the properties of the sphere that you're trying to draw. So you got to back up a little bit, and sometimes it's not exactly there. But
and troubleshooting a program is very useful for them. Oh well, let's try printing out the electric field at this point and see what happens. But and I try to show them those things, but I don't emphasize it too much because I don't want them to get too frustrated. So,
yeah,
they come in frustrated. They're like, I'm not a computer programmer. I don't want to do this anyway. So I try to make it as painless as possible.
Yeah, I end up I give them templates for a lot of things. I give them, like I write the program because they get hung up on all the properties of the, like doing the animation, like, getting the color of the sphere and getting it to leave a trail and all this sort of stuff. They get bogged down in that a lot of times, and so like I do that stuff, and then like, the 3 lines that have the physics in it, I take those formulas out.
No, that's a great way.
Replace it with nonsense. Like, okay, fix that.
Right. No, I like that way. That's a good way. And then they feel
a lot of my templates end up having, there's like commented out print statements in various places. They're like, well, what's that do? Like, well, right now it doesn't do anything. Like, what it was doing before I commented out is it was there because it was throwing an error, and and I just had it print something every time it went through so I could know how many times did it go through this loop before it crashed. And so, those sorts of little stupid techniques, which I got to remember to strip those out when I give them before I give them the template, because some people will get really hung up on like, but what's that? It's like,
so I'm taking notes here, as I always do, and I wrote down Nobel Prize because I figured we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. So blue LEDs. Hey, that's pretty cool.
I thought.
That's it. Oh, seem to have lost you.
There.
You froze up for a while there.
Okay, and with a weird face too.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, but I was going to say, I thought Ethan did a really good job of summarizing that. Did you read his version?
No, I haven't had time. I wrote my version and then I just got.
I like your version too because and I think your point was really great that no one's prepared. All the publications aren't prepared for this, so they kind of just say something quick. Just say something. Nobel Prize. Dial.
Yeah. No, it was striking, and largely because of the contrast to last year when it was the Higgs. Everybody knew it was going to be the Higgs boson at some point in the very near future, and so everybody had their Higgs boson Nobel piece ready to go. Right? They had the outline of it, and so then you got some different framings of things right away because. People had the sort of the skeleton of it, and nobody really expected it to be blue LEDs. I
was counting on red personally.
You were rooting for what?
The red LED.
Yeah, that guy's pissed. I don't know if you've seen that. The guy who invented the red LED has been quoted in a couple of newspapers saying, like, "What the hell?"
He did kind of get screwed.
Yeah, and I didn't realize that. I figured they must have given an earlier LED or diode laser or something prize, but apparently not. So.
I mean, they should have given 3 guys, one for red, one for green, and one for blue.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Well, one of these guys actually made the first really good green ones too. I mean, most like green laser pointers are frequently. It's not a green diode. It's an infrared diode with a doubling crystal glued to the front of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you actually start with 1,000 nanometer light, and then double it to 500 and something, and that get frequency double half the wavelength.
Yeah.
Because 500 is not double 1,000.
Well, for very large numbers of 1,000, it is.
These optics shorthand things, right? But anyway, it's an infrared. A lot of laser pointers it's really an infrared diode that you frequency double to get into the green, because that for a long time was cheaper and easier than doing the green LEDs. And one of these guys, when they started these new techniques, the gallium nitride stuff, then you can actually make a diode that just directly produces green light. But I think that there's so much sunk into the infrastructure for the infrared diodes that it's still mostly easier to do that.
I mean, the interesting thing I think is that, all too often it's, the Higgs field. Okay, that's a great example. I mean, it's like, hey, that's cool and everything, but what does that have to do with me? And the blue LED is in your face, having to do with everyone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you put your phone in your face all the time. And
exactly. Yeah, I think I paraphrased. So there was a journalist had, it's very appropriate that everybody's waking up this morning and learning about the Nobel Prize on devices that use the Nobel Prize. You probably learned about the blue LED winning by looking at the screen of a device that's lit by a blue LED.
And it's not that long ago. 10 years ago, I mean, no one had LCD screens, right? I mean, we had CRT monitors, and there was no portable. We had the iPod, and it just had the LCD screen, right? It was just colored. I mean, it wasn't colored; it was just light in black and white, right?
Yeah, and there are all these color LCD things that people tried to do, and there's like e-ink, right? That has pretty much, that's almost been killed by how cheap the LED displays got really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, but I think the e-ink still has a market, and I have a e-ink Kindle, and I think it's nicer to read. It's lighter. The battery life lasts longer, and I don't know. I like it.
Yeah, the battery life on this is fantastic. I gotta say that I have a Nook that's an e-ink screen, and I like it better for some things, but I've mostly switched to reading just on my phone because I always have it with me.
Yeah.
And I don't have to carry a second thing around, and it's backlit, so I don't have to. I think if I had one of the backlit Kindles or the backlit Nook with the e-ink with the built-in lighting, I think I would probably be happier with that.
Well, maybe the next year's Nobel Prize will be for something else that we find useful, like a battery that actually works in my phone and makes it last maybe 2 days. That's all I want. 2 days. I'll be happy with 2 days. I
go through. My phone goes through these things. I can't figure out quite what it is. It goes through these periods where it works great. The battery lasts. And I want it to last from 6 in the morning till 9 at night. If I can get that, then I'm good. Then I don't have to plug it in a charger while I'm moving around. And I'll go for 2 weeks. It'll be great. And then and then earlier this week, I'm having to plug it in at 1 in the afternoon. Why is this drained already?
I mean, I find that mine drains when I travel because when I travel, I use it a lot more. I mean, during that, when I'm teaching and stuff like that, I don't use it, and it'll last all day. But you know, if I'm traveling, I get bored and I'm surfing online or whatever, and then it's zoop, it's gone. So
Yeah, I think some of it is there are a number of places on campus where the reception is awful.
oh, that does
And
matter.
I think the room that I'm teaching in this term is in the basement of the social sciences building, and I think it just sucks the battery there because
It's
it
trying to
can't.
find when it tries harder to find a tower or
Right.
whatever. Yeah, that's a known. I think that's a known thing.
Yeah, we ended up buying smartphones when we went to Britain. We thought we could buy phones and then sell them back when we left, and it turned out the sell back when you left part wasn't worth the bother. So I now have a second Motorola smartphone that I'm now just using as an e-reader. But because it doesn't work on the Verizon network here, it's useless as a cell phone, but it gets Wi-Fi. So I put it in airplane mode. That sucker lasts. That goes like 3-4 days. If you turn off the cell capability of it, the battery life goes up enormously.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I don't like to plug companies, but that was nice about T-Mobile. I went over to Sweden and text messaging and data work for free, so I don't have to do anything. And I'm not going to call anyone. I'm not going to call somebody. So
yeah.
But that was really nice.
Yeah, we're kind of stuck with Verizon because they're the only they have far and away the best coverage up here, and so any of the other ones you go you go a little bit north of here, then it starts dropping in and out, and you don't have anything. And Verizon has decent coverage, middle of the Adirondack Park, not so much, but
Yeah.
but anything near a highway around here, you can pick up Verizon.
So this is the part where we would say, hey, next week we should have a guest on, and then we'll talk about it, and we'll say, yeah, that's a great idea, and then a week from now we'll come up like, hey, I never called anyone, did you? And then no, okay, well let's just go. So we got that part out of the way.
So whose turn is it to not call somebody next week?
We share. We both don't call anyone, just like always.
So yeah, we'll see. One of these.
What we might want to do is, someone had a good Google form. It wasn't a Google form, but it was like where people vote on questions and stuff like that, and so people can ask questions and then vote on which ones they want. I don't remember where it was, but if we get enough people asking questions, which we don't, that'd be pretty cool. But so
because we never think to ask people to ask us questions.
I know, I always forget.
Always. So sitting here and the thing starts beeping. So right, uncertain dots. Like I'm not. So,
and then where'd he go?
I get caught up reading my own book to remember how to explain things about relativity.
The problem reading your own book, you might find an error, and then you're gonna be really mad.
Yeah. So really, what I ought to do? I mean, actually, the book that they are reading for class is the Cox and Forshaw relativity, because which I borrow some stuff from, but
you should just assign your book.
Always seems like a dick move to tell my class of 39 students that they have to buy my book.
And it's really not, because you don't make any money off that really, and I think they probably think, oh, he's raking it in because we're buying $39 books, but in the grand scheme of things, it's like
I get like $1 a copy is what I get. So
that's like when my Angry Birds book came out. Some of my wife's friends like, oh, we'll buy your book for you. I was like, please don't. If I need to count on people, my friends buy my book. It's just not worth it in that case. Buy it if you want to, but don't buy it for me. Buy it for you. So
yeah. So yeah.
All right.
Well,
I guess that's any place to stop.
I think so.
All right, well, same time next week.
You know, give or take.
Yeah, give or take a week. All
Pretty
right.
much.
We'll see you later.